IVM.
There's something about sports that just genuinely, for us as humans, just kind of brings us together, makes us really feel, I think, the entire spectrum of emotions that we can ever feel. And more than anything else, it also kind of brings us together as a community, right? It's not just about playing it, it's about watching it and experiencing it and talking about it and consuming content around it and so much more. And for the longest time, when we talked about sports, it meant something that was, the physical kind, what you always seen as traditional sports. But over the last many years, esports, what was called gaming when I was younger, because it was considered something that kids did, has become something that has almost, if not equaled importance in terms of how traditional sports have looked at, but also actually kind of grown in just kind of the expanse in which you can kind of go to, because everybody can participate, everybody can be part of it. And there are companies who have over time invested and built multiple spaces in it, not just by training gamers, but really managing teams and now creating content around them. One such company is Global Esports, and I have its co-founders, Dr. Rushinder Sinha and Satyan Pujari, on the show today. And I want to talk to them about how the present crisis has kind of helped accelerate what they're doing, has made them change, or rather made them kind of push faster certain things they wanted to do as a company, and where they see the entire esports arena kind of going. And in some ways, do they see esports being the only future of sports altogether? Or maybe kind of merging into the overall sports thing where we just don't use the word E anymore? All this and more on this week's episode of Advertising is Dead. I'm Varun Dugirala, the co-founder and content chief of The Glitch. We're right back with Advertising is Dead.
Namaskar, dear Bandhu. My name is Ashish Vidyarthi. These are truly challenging times, and in these times, we need hope. Do take time to listen to my podcast, Begin the Journey. Available on IVM Podcasts, website, app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Remember, there is hope because there's one life and we are alive.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. Be with Rushi and Satyan. Hey guys.
Hello. Hey.
Just before we start recording, I was telling both of you all that I've been going through a deep hole of getting back to gaming after many, and I think I'm like one of the old people conversation you would have heard. No, I used to play Doom at one point of time. There was something called Wolfenstein which I started with, I will reference Max Payne at some point. So I would be this really like, who is this uncle gamer type start to this conversation, but in general, I just thought we'll start off by asking, Rushi, if you can kind of fill in, just if you have to talk about the entire landscape, what would you say the esports landscape is like right now?
Oh, right now, in fact, more than ever, it has absolutely exploded. Esports was already one of the fastest growing ecosystems and industries in the world. And with everything happening in lockdown, everyone being stuck at home, that has just accelerated. Exactly how you mentioned, like you've got back to gaming after how many ever years. That's happened to millions of people across the globe. And especially in the younger audience, where a lot of people who were not gamers essentially or introduced to the concept of gaming have gotten involved. And that has led into a surge in esports as
well. Has that also led to, because there is so much content, like I think the first time I felt it became slightly not mainstream, but I felt it was spreading a lot wider as well. Is I was watching Tanmay suddenly started to do videos around gaming, and I'm like, one second, this is not traditionally what any of the creators would do. I mean, that there was always supposed to be a division there, but do you guys feel that that's also kind of scaled up? People really watching a lot more. I know there was a large audience watching esports, but do you think that's increased as well? Satya?
Absolutely. I mean, from a viewer perspective, it's the other way around. So people were watching Mortal even before Tanmay came into his casting team. But when Tanmay came in, a huge bunch of people who were not so keen on seeing gaming and were probably inclined to humor also discovered gaming. And that's the best part about gaming. Like esports in general, there's not just people who are playing and making money, but people who are casting, who are commenting on it, people who are making memes out of it. It's a whole different 2020 version of an industry now.
What I also found interesting was, and I was talking to someone the other day about it, is that it's also not just about the game itself, right? Or people just not just watching. It's about taking different parts of it, and like I said, not even just memes. I think people are doing this random stuff. Like you will have a random like I was watching a clip about how in the Spider-Man game there is a way for you to kind of go and find in the graveyard, his Uncle Ben's grave, and you can actually walk up, and that's not necessarily a part of what the gameplay is. And so I think people are making content not just about the main gaming part itself, but they're actually making a lot of content around like random stuff that happens along the way.
I think that ties into the entire ecosystem of the game along with the gamers as well, because it becomes part of culture. And then they get involved, like especially when you have it something like Star Wars, or even when you have, whether it's a comic book or it's a Marvel movie, right? People get really involved with the ecosystem, and then you'll have everything around that ecosystem that you even integrate into your day-to-day life. It just becomes part of what you do and who you are.
And if you have to look at the way you guys work, right? So if you had to explain what global esports does, what would you say? What if you look at the different parts of it? How do you explain that?
I'm going to let Satyan answer this first because I want to hear his version of this before I tell you mine.
Okay, so this is basically a transition phase for us as well. So what global esports historically has been doing is that it has been taking kids with great potential, honing them into team, training them with the best of facilities, and then letting them compete in like the best of tournaments. So they did this in India, Korea, so many other places, right? Now what we are looking at is that this is the very West approach of doing things. So you sign up a good talent, let him perform, get brand deals, and get that monetized. What's happening in India right now is that there's a lot of people who are discovering gaming. So they are way behind in the curve from knowing how to play. Like they have to start the journey from knowing how to play and then getting better at it. So this this question is a little in the transition phase where we are now shifting our mindset into getting more people on board to this culture of gaming. So we are doing something like a college university level tournaments, like very grassroots level tournaments for like 10-20,000 bucks as a prize money. But it's great engagement for the kids, and now they are looking at gaming as not just a time way to kill time, but actually a career path.
Yeah. Right. So as Satyan said, traditionally Global Esports is an esports organization that owns teams that competes in tournaments, as well as work on the grassroots level with the community to grow the ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah. Where you're evolving is interesting when I think about it, right? Because I remember that Rishi, you and I had met a year or two ago, and at that time, I remember when you had spoken to me about how it was kind of scaling up globally. There were many parts of it which were like it kind of blew my mind, because I was looking at it saying, okay, this makes total sense. Primarily because it has become a lot of teams competing. It has become that,
right.
But where you're going to now is also interesting, primarily because I feel that the content around it, and that's been the most interesting thing for me to watch. I think the first time I started looking at the content around gaming was when Amazon acquired Twitch. I'm like, 1 second, if Amazon has acquired anything, I'd want to know more about it. And the more I went,
$1 billion.
Exactly, right. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to understand this more. And then the more content I've consumed on it, I realized the fact that, and this is like a throwback to some things which actually television very weirdly had. I mean, there were this, I think, 10 sports sometime back, ages ago, used to have like, you could actually watch people gaming. I know MTV tried a very weird way a gaming tournament, which I switched off, I think, very quickly, the one which MTV India did. But there have been attempts to do this, but do you think it's almost a mainstreaming of that scenario, like how you have for what is considered traditional sports?
I think this is a very gradual progression, because even if you see how Twitch evolved, Twitch started off as Justin TV, which was a live streaming platform where people would vlog, right? And then they realized most people, instead of vlogging, they were playing games, and the viewership was the highest on that, which is why they started focusing more on doing that. And then people started hosting tournaments on the platform, and the viewership went to the point where their vlogging was less than 1% of their viewership. So they just rebranded and only became a gaming platform. So it's slowly going towards that. And as we were talking even before the call started, I think it's more interactive as opposed to just consuming, content where you're just staring at a screen.
Do you see the when I look at the coaching aspect? I remember the last time we had met, there was this, and I found it interesting the fact that you were getting groups of gamers together and coaching them and kind of creating them
and either taking on teams or coaching them and giving them almost spaces to train. Now, if you look at the college thing, do you see this as being different? I mean, in the sense that the global market has functioned a certain way, the Indian market, as it always does, has a very different journey in every aspect. So, how do you see this playing differently for India in that sense?
No, I think it will still add up. So with with activations at college level, what we are trying to do is create more players playing at potentially that kind of level where they can compete in pro tournaments. So this is something that internally we call as path to pro for us. So basically get kids who have the potential but they still probably don't realize it, and then slowly rank them up to a level where they can now officially train with the group, train with the best of the coaches and compete and represent India. So this is not like a complete shift. So it's a transition that we are looking at.
I think the thing is same. There's only so much you can grow when playing gully cricket.
Yeah. How did you guys hook up? Like, how did you guys kind of start collabing on this together?
Yeah, I would let Rishi answer that because that's a funny story in Thailand.
So we actually connected. I met Nick Nikunj, that's BU Nick. Met him in June at a Facebook conference, and that's how I bumped into him. And we started talking, and he was a big gamer, and he kept telling me that he enjoys gaming, and he was really interested in what we were doing. And we would keep bumping into each other at various conferences, various places. And then we ended up going together to Thailand for his birthday. It was a very spontaneous trip, and that's where we met Satyan. And Mohit and I met Satyan there for the first time, and since then we just got so involved, right? Because Nick and Satyan understand so much about the content space and about the advertising space and the brand aspect of it, and the gaming world is just standing at the gates of that, waiting to get in. So it was a perfect collision of the two worlds. And Satyan, do you have a different version of that? I'm curious.
So it's the same version. Just to give a backstory, I am also a first generation YouTuber. Made a brand in auto shows, something called as Power Drift. It still exists, but last year it got acquired by Car Deco. So I understand the YouTube side of things. I understand the creator mindset, and I understand what brands like to see in creators. So that's where I fit in, and me and Nick work on a lot of businesses together, including something that are totally offline, like a food truck business in LA, not LA, but there in US. And now, when we spoke,
I had Nick on the podcast. He told me about it.
Yeah. So this was Feast India company, right? So when we were jamming on ideas, Rishi and Mohit mentioned about something to do with female gamers, and so my first question to them was probably that: are you doing this for PR, or do you really have a vested interest in doing this in a proper, full-fledged manner? And that's when the conversation sparked, and then we realized, okay, there is a lot of common things that we can help each other out in different ways. How do we hack this into a better business? And I think since the time we met, we changed the mindset of content at GE, and I think now we have 900% growth in last some 20 days of lockdown. So
in the last 20 days of lockdown.
Last 28 days has been a 900% growth.
I'm not even getting into because I thought it was okay, last 1 year, last 6 months, last quarter.
Okay. No, that numbers goes much higher when we look at the last 90 days, which has been the entire duration of the lockdown.
Right.
Why would you say that there's been so much of a growth spurt in this period?
So I think one of the main reasons is that, as I said, everyone sitting at home. Initially, we had a big entry barrier into India where a lot of parents didn't want their kids spending time playing video games or rather wasting time playing video games. Now they're at a point where, there's no school, there's less responsibilities, as in, going out into the world. Parents are happy to let their kids play for as long as they want, as long as they don't need to deal with them. But that's just caused an increase in spike of gamers. Also, a lot of people who were never interested in gaming have gotten interested now because they started off as pure boredom, but now it's moving on to the point where it's becoming the cool new trend and more people are discovering it. Even on YouTube now, if you see in the top trending videos, gaming videos are coming way more often than they were ever coming before, because people are now understanding gaming content. They want to consume more content, but there isn't enough out there. That's where we come
in. Even for sports like cricket, right? If I know how to bat and bowl, my aspiration of being a pro IPL player is next to a zero. But that's not true for your Call of Duty or a PUBG, right? You know back in the head that if you're good at it, with the right backing, you can actually become a pro player. So from an aspiration standpoint, at least the younger generation feel that they have a shot at it, and that's why they are playing. For the generation which is a typically late adopters, they are having fun watching people kill each other on the match. So that's as playing people, right? And there's nothing else to watch. Like you can't see new cricket anymore. You can't see new football anymore. So you see the same map and 4 of your favorite players trying to outwit your opponents, and that's fun to watch. So it's becoming that as a habit now. So it's growing because of these 3 pillars, like the watch rate, the people playing, and the aspiration that, you know what, I could be a pro player someday.
Yeah, the entry barrier right now for games are so low. Because all you need is a mobile phone. All you need is a device that's on you.
So one interesting tidbit, by the way, when we were doing some data analysis, we saw a lot of senior women playing. And then we realized that, okay, these are not senior women playing. It's their kids playing. So on the data, we are seeing like 35 to 40 age group of women playing PUBG. And we're like, what? This doesn't make sense. So the barrier...
Well, you call 35 to 40 senior. So I'm
I think 35 onward.
In terms of gamers, yeah.
I'm 38, so I have become senior at this point.
I'm not.
No, so the average age of retirement for a pro gamer is 26 to 28. So right, anyone 35 plus is considered senior because they've either retired and they're coaching or they're just playing for the sake of it.
But don't you think that will be different for India? Because if you look at how we would generally go, is that even someone was gaming in school or even college, everybody wants them to finish that degree, get into this thing, then do that. It's never. I mean, are you seeing that change? Like people looking at gaming as a full-time thing a lot earlier than they were, let's say, even a year or 2 ago?
Oh, definitely. And I think once the lockdown gets lifted, it's going to be even crazier. I mean, we are getting hundreds of applications a day. And not just as gamers, right? As various other aspects of whether it's as shoutcasters, whether it's broadcasters, editors, so many people, even from the YouTube or the influencer market that want to get onto the gaming side of things. There are just so many career opportunities there now.
Yeah. Do you see, I mean, you mentioned a couple of things, right, just now. And I think that's another thing. Because a large part of the audience on this podcast is really young. And they're like, they're just either in college or just like starting off work and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when people talk about esports or we look at sport in general, you always tend to think of the person's going to be playing, right? But there's so many things you can actually do around it.
Yes.
If you had to kind of put down a few things, what would if I wanted to have not a career in esports, I want to do something with esports, what are the kind of things I can do? Like I know there are too many of them, but if you had to put a few out there.
Wow. Okay. So you start off with, the pro athletes. They're called athletes now. So the pro athletes and the content creators, that's the absolute base crux. When you go from there, it goes into, team managers, coaches, analysts. Then you have editors for them. You have even cinematographers. Then there is talent managers. There are agents. It's, there are esports organization owners like we are and what we're doing. There's just so many aspects to it. Shoutcasting, broadcasting, commentators, tournament organizers.
What is shoutcasting? If you have to explain to a person who doesn't know what that is.
Something like what cricket commentary is. Where it's more about building up the hype as opposed to, the analytics of the game. So most tournaments have 2 types of casters. Is one who is just someone who is, like how you would have in a boxing match, someone who's there to hype up the entire crowd and the game. Yeah, and then there's one person who's more analytical, who's breaking down the game play by play and giving you the detail about what's happening in the game.
So the opportunities for content creation are just immense, right? Like, and even if you look at traditional sports, most times it has only been analysis or it's been, let's say, just commentary. And now slowly, at least in India, we started to do more things beyond that for traditional sports.
Right.
So that for esports to kind of make that jump and do a lot more things and which I'm guessing you guys already are, that should be much faster to do. Sachin?
Yeah. Quickly, even what is happening right now is that even if I am playing a simple round of PUBG, I get to record it. Then I do my own version of commentary on it. So there is a player called as Max Stern in our team. He's been a pro player, so he plays really well, and he's basically a troll artist. If I may use that word, he trolls people for the fun of it. So he would record things on PUBG, and he's a pro player, by the way. So his gameplay is very good. I'll repeat that. But he will still end up trolling people and making fun, small snippet videos out of it. And if you go on to his YouTube now, at any moment that he's casting, he has like 150,000 people waiting to watch him. So there,
And he is right now. He's been making a lot of short snackable content for TikTok as well, and he is right now one of the largest gaming content creators on TikTok, where he has got more than 11 million views, I believe, in the last few weeks.
7 million likes.
11 million likes in the last few weeks.
Have you also seen them because of all of this? Have you seen a lot more traction with brands in recent times than let's say even like a couple of years ago?
Not really. I mean, it's still slow. See, I mean, one thing that we learned from my
The ones I hear from are more laptop brands. I know that those.
So we call them
those
as endemic brands.
Endemic brands have always been there.
Sorry?
Sorry, yes, Sachin, you can answer that. I was just saying, endemic brands have always been there.
Yeah, so brands that have a vested interest. So in the mobile phone space, you will have a Vivo sponsoring a tournament, and then a OnePlus, and then so on. But somebody like a PepsiCo is still slow, while they have a Dew Arena going on. But they're still slow, and there's not many brands jumping in at this moment. But like last week, Airtel announced a big esports tour. So it's changing, but it's not at the pace where it is at a global level. So globally, you have a BMW partnering events, a Mercedes doing crazy things.
Coca-Cola did like $100 million for just one big tournament.
Yeah, and in India, just because the global parent brand is doing it, they will have their logo presence in India, but that's about it. So it's slowly changing, but we think it will really explode in another 6 months.
What do you think that requires? What do you think that change requires? I mean, one is a mindset thing, because are they looking at it? I mean, if you look at it as what brands have been used to is traditional sporting, anything around traditional sports, and then there's esports. What do they need to change in their minds to kind of work in this space? I mean, to be really impactful.
The honest answer would be majority of the guys signing big checks out there do not understand the digital space at all. Like their understanding of digital space itself is a challenge. For them, a YouTube advertising is like a free Gmail account, right? So it's that problem is a legacy problem that we have. But like people like Paytm, people like Jio, people like Amazon in India now, they're all realizing that look, this can potentially become a huge thing, and we don't want to miss the bus. So the baiting now and seeding some bit of money and figuring out. I think the mindset has to first understand that the digital native is very different than the guy watching the TV ad for the fourth time while watching the same show. And here it's a behavior where people are latching on to watch content by their choice, and they have the opportunity to skip out as well. So if you place your brand smartly here, it's going to stick to the audience head. And that's something that we really want as a mindset to change. But I think it will take some time. It will first need to go to understanding digital, then content, and then gaming maybe.
So again, it's not an if, it's a when.
Do you also see, because we've been discussing how India's different as well, and before we start recording, Satyan, you mentioned that the mobile phone has actually been the big difference here, because would you say, I mean, would PUBG be that moment when it kind of just went to another space? And if you have to look at why, because you would always play games on your mobile, but I think when PUBG came out is when it suddenly became this like it kind of went through different kind of categories or rather segments of people in that sense.
Yeah. So PUBG, like the previous example I gave, right, about the aspiration that anyone could be a pro player. So PUBG came in with big guns, doing a crore rupee tournament every now and then, and that caught a lot of imagination, right? So now there's PUBG, there's Free Fire, there's so many mobile games that people are playing, and they all want to become a pro player in that game title. So PUBG was, of course, a big thing. More than that, maybe Jio, because it gave fast internet access to so many more people, and it's all happening at the right time, basically.
Yeah, and I think before that, mobile games were more of a casual thing. You know, you had your set of Candy Crush, there were puzzle games. They were just a lot of idle clickers that you wanted to do when you had some extra time. No one was actively going and, playing those games that aaj main 2 ghante Candy Crush khelunga. It's more like, okay, I have a few minutes, let me play Candy Crush. Then it went, PUBG came out.
Thing on earth.
It is the worst game
So
on.
when PUBG came out, the entire equation changed because people are actively going and spending time. They wanted to not only get better at the game, they wanted to stream, they wanted to create memes and content, they wanted to compete in it. So that entire aspect came in. And again, a lot of these people were, initially people who were interested in gaming, but could either not afford a gaming PC or not keep up with the market because every year there's a higher end graphic card coming out and there's a new game coming out every month which requires your 2080 Ti or the highest end graphic card which is $1.5 lakh, which just didn't make sense to upgrade every couple of months. While a phone, even if you have a 5,000 rupee Android phone or you have a lakh iPhone, you're going to get access to that game and you can still play it. So just the entry barrier, and as Satyan said, with Jio coming in with the internet, the entry barrier just became so easy and accessible that it just blew up.
And maybe in that sense also made it a lot more. I mean, I hate to use the word mass, but I think you require a much wider audience,
right,
with easy access for anything to kind of grow. Rishi, you started. I mean, you still are a doctor. Do you still practice? Do you still practice?
I don't practice anymore. I'm still. I still work with. So my family owns a chain of hospitals. So I still do the management part of the hospital, but globally sports is where I spend all my time.
So how did you get into this? If you kind of go back,
wow,
journey wise,
that I have a long history of gaming. So I come from a family of 26 doctors. So medicine was more of an innate career for me.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. My dad's a general surgeon. Grandfather was a physician. Grandmom was gynec. My aunt is gynec. Dentist, ortho. Everybody, like literally, like multi-specialty hospital is one family. It's literally that. So.
Lovely. So you understand that, right? So for me, growing up, medicine was the only thing I saw, right? So it wasn't even like I was forced into it. But at 18, when my parents asked me, "What do you want to do?" I didn't know of any other careers. I was like, "Doctor." Like it was more of a question mark than a statement. And so when I got into med school, I started off, but I was always into tech. I started gaming when I was 3 years old, and I got in, the general progression started with console games, handheld video games. Then Mohit's elder brother introduced us to LAN gaming at the age of 9 years old, which, there's no age for a kid to be going into a LAN cafe. But we were fortunate enough
LAN cafes were the best thing ever when they were there.
We grew up in
a community in that sense with the LAN cafe.
Exactly. So that's really how we got involved into the gaming community. We got together, we made friends over there. We had a team that started competing in local tournaments, started getting better, started competing at national tournaments, even competed in a few international tournaments. By the age of 12, Mohit and I had competed in multiple tournaments across 2 separate titles. And it just so we have been on the other side of esports. Back then it wasn't even called esports; it was a LAN gaming tournament. That's it. There was no other word for it. It wasn't an ecosystem. It was at individual cafes, organized and curated by them, which had nothing to do with the publishers. Now, of course, the publishers, handle it a lot better and are using esports to grow their game. But that's really how it started. And we moved on to online games. And I remember we got really addicted to this game called Ragnarok Online. So much so that Mohit and I became the best players in the country. And from there, we started emailing the developers and started recommending changes. But I'm sure they get millions of emails. They never responded to any of them. So I went back and reverse engineered the code, and we created our own version of that game with a few friends. And that really became popular. And then in 2008, 2009, we actually sold that game off to an Australian company. So that was our first gaming startup and our exit in the gaming space. And from there, it was just, we were just part of the ecosystem always. So it was just a very natural progression in 2017 when we started Global Esports after the international announcer $25 million prize money for Dota 2.
Yeah.
So that was, if we don't jump in now, we're going to miss this.
No, it makes total sense. I think around that time is when everybody started talking about a lot more. Like I said, when it was a LAN gaming tournament, it was always one of those things called local cyber cafes having a tournament. That is literally what you would call it, right? You won't even call it that. Satyan, were you into gaming as well? I mean, I want to talk about your journey in terms of Power Drift, but I want to also kind of start off by saying, has gaming been something that you've been continually doing?
Like exactly what you said, like how you got into gaming, that was exactly the way it was. So I played a bit of Quake, I played a bit of Duke 3D and so on, and then the last game that I played was Max Payne, ironically. So then nothing happened. Then life happened.
That was a phenomenal game, though. You have to give
Max Payne was one of my favorite games.
So what used to happen is that in my college group, every day after the college ended, we used to go back home, play another like 2-3 hours, and then say, where have we reached? So we would compare our scores like that. That, okay, I have reached to this stage. Where are you now? Okay, you need to do this. So we were talking about it. But I think the gaming mindset wasn't there. Back in Power Drift as well, because we had a big full-fledged edit, like 2 bays of edit room, one online edit, one offline edit. So we had like 5v5 set up there and our own LAN. So at the end of the day, all of us would end up going on Counter-Strike or Call of Duty and jam on that for at least like 4-6 hours a day. But after that, haven't been a part of the gaming community as such. But when me and Nick met, when we met at Global Esports as well, we started playing PUBG. And I think that's like we're pretty addicted to it. And like my wife keeps complaining that the only reason why you joined Global Esports is because now you can play PUBG and say you are working, right? So
yeah. So my wife accuses me of the same thing. She said that's the only reason you started a gaming company. Yeah, so every time I tell you to stop playing, you can say, baby, I'm working.
This is work.
But Satyan, you've been in the content space for a while, right? How was your whole, like, when did you get into the content side of things? Or has it always been an area of focus?
So I think 2010, like when we saw, so my last corporate gig was with Vodafone. I was a part of the new products thing. So I saw 3G before people got to see it. And we really saw the potential of where it could be. So back then I was in Pune for a good 6 months on a deployment of 3G as a project and some fraud prevention things on it, boring corporate stuff. But what really happened is that the motorcycling scene, so I was a very active motorcycle rider, I still am. And we saw that, okay, you know what, the way India does motorcycling content is quite terrible, to be honest. So it is a template that this car has 4 wheels, this engine, this petrol, 45 color options and so on. And we always, as enthusiasts, we saw it to be very boring. So we said, okay, let's do something. So over the weekend, we would help create some ideas, make some videos of motorcycling the way we thought it should be done. And 7-8 videos that we did as Power to the Rider really went viral. So much so that one of the big names in the content space asked us to make content for them. And that was a time when we said, okay, you know what? If we are in it, we need to be full time on this. So I took a break from Vodafone. We rebranded Power to the Rider. So Power to the Rider was more like a weekend thing for us. And because it worked, it transformed into Power Drift, which now did car content as well. And then on, it's been a fun journey.
It's funny because that's very similar to how Global Esports started.
I think that is one of those transitions, right? It's always, I mean, what I find also interesting is the fact that when I talk about both the journeys as well, there are things which you both genuinely enjoy about this space, which is the reason why you're able to figure things around it and stuff like that. Do you think brands need to enjoy things in this space a lot more and not even just brands, I think brands, agencies, if I was an agency or a brand today, and I said, okay, I want to really understand this space and be almost, how can I be the best supporter for it? What would you tell me? I mean, I know the digital part, you said you need to understand that, but beyond that, if I had to a couple of things which I have to do or keep in mind.
See, I think the most easiest thing and the most fun way is to start playing games. Like put a half an hour de-stress gaming booth there for people to go have fun whenever the office is open, or do one of those Zoom meetings where you are now playing a round of PUBG and just having fun basically. Because if you start playing, you will realize that, okay, this is also an activity that is keeping you mentally fit. The coordination, that the whole, the ability of talking to you while gaming and saying, hey, you know what, there's someone coming from the other side, and basically solving a problem at that moment and being at it and having the fun of winning or losing. So I think if you start playing for maybe an hour a day max, you will figure out.
I think you have an opportunity to do corporate employee engagement activities with HR teams across brands is literally
it's going to happen. It's happening at the colleges right now. Because colleges have no physical like PT lessons now, right? So we partnered with one group of institutes. We are doing the small scale tournaments, and it's working great for the kids. The kids are having fun. They are giving great feedback to the teachers, and now the teachers are saying that okay, we never thought this could become this exciting. The college is suddenly a cool college now because it does
gaming tournaments. Right? See, the other trend that we have seen is even when we're talking to brands and investors, a lot of them earlier, like Satya said, were of the traditional background where digital wasn't where they were looking at. But now sitting at home, even if they don't play the game, a lot of them have kids at home that are sitting glued to their games. Right. So they're seeing the kind of engagement that their kids have. Their kids don't get up for hours. When they call them for meals, they call them for dinner. The kids are so glued into it. And if they're not playing, they're consuming gaming content. So they have come and told us that they have realized the importance of that's the only way to get their kids' attention. So that's why they are seeing the trend, just being at home, seeing their kids, the amount they are engaging with the game. I think that interactivity aspect, which Satyan said, of being part of a team or just working together with your friends or making new friends online, that entire interactivity has really changed the space over the past few years.
The interactivity, when you mention it, that's also one thing which right now, if you look at, and I'm going back to traditional sports and in esports, right? Because traditional sports are now trying to add a lot more pieces, which they have to I don't use the word, I will not use new normal, but I've just said it, so I will let that go. But in the way sports will happen going ahead, they are trying to build a lot of these things, right? I mean, before we start recording, I mentioned the fact that there was this, I was watching this Dutch football league just started off, and they have screens across the space where the audience is watching from their home, but even the players can see the fact that they actually have an audience. It's not just an empty stadium. If you had to kind of say cross-learning in that sense, obviously there have been tournaments in stadiums with large audiences watching gaming tournaments, but if you had to kind of say that, what are the aspects which esports is now kind of taking in and making part of its own, and which from traditional sports?
I think esports in general was already, I wouldn't say COVID ready, but I would, rather phrase that esports was already digital, right? In fact, a lot of the lives of our players and content creators hasn't changed too much besides their recreational activity that they would do outdoors, because all their work involves around being indoors in their room, on their computer or on their phone, either playing the game or creating content around it. So innately, we have been more prepared for being indoors for long durations of time as opposed to, I would say, most other industries. And of course, the stadium tournaments did happen. But for example, the League of Legends finals every year have about 40,000 people in a stadium, but there's around 99 million people watching online. So after the lockdown opens, we'll probably still get those 40,000 in the stadium. The 99 million that were watching online, that number is only going to grow now. The rest of them will still continue consuming that content digitally and consuming it online. So you may not have as many LAN tournaments and offline tournaments, but the frequency of online tournaments have increased tenfold.
I was seeing this tournament where I think all the cricketers are playing.
OnePlus.
Yes.
Yeah.
1+1, yeah. And I was like, okay, this is going true mainstream in that sense, where when you suddenly have cricketers doing something with any other sport, it's suddenly like it's being pushed out a lot more.
Yeah, and a lot of publishers and a lot of endemic brands are also really pushing it. For example, Twitch, as you mentioned earlier, Valorant is a game that launched today. Day after tomorrow, they have announced a $200,000 tournament. So within 72 hours of the game's release, they are announcing a 1.5 crore prize money tournament. And if you take all the other smaller tournaments happening on the weekend, including ours, we're hosting a tournament as well for the Indian audience. All those tournaments go almost up to $500,000 in a span of the first week of the game.
So when you look at all of these things, if you had to, like you said, the next 6 months are going to be major. You already had major growth drivers, but next 6-8 months, where do you see this scaling up? If you have to put a couple of things on in terms of what the scaling up is going to be, not just in terms of number of people playing, but in terms of the overall space itself.
So
I think see the content space itself. Like for example, Valorant now. When we did a tournament, we did a Valorant tournament while it was still in beta, and we had like 2,000-3,000 people watching it. What's really going to be happening now is that now that people know that there's $500,000 to be won, people are going to download the game. It's a free-to-play game, right? So people are going to download the game, want to learn. So we see a huge potential spike happening in the content space of the help category of content. Then, of course, you have players who are now switching on to a different game. So there's a pro Counter-Strike player wanting to play Valorant, and he will document his journey of Valorant, and because he also wants the audience behind him, right? So I think content is going to be the big play. Of course, Disney and Hotstar has already started streaming the ESL India, but I think on-demand content, especially in the help category, is going to be a big growth driver as well.
Rishi?
Yeah, definitely. I think the big push is going to be a lot more people are hosting tournaments. There's a lot more, like as Satyan said, a lot more content that not only we, a lot of people are pushing the content aspect of it, the tournament side of things. And again, what we are expecting is immediately after the lockdown to open, most people are going to have screen fatigue. So the entire digital space is looking at a little bit of a lull. But a few days later, people are going to go back to their phones and, they will go back to playing games. And it's going to leave the industry way, way higher than what it was before we got into this entire lockdown. So a lot of the projections that were slated for end of the year in terms of esports and, gaming as a whole have been crossed as of May. It's not, not even half the year is done, and we have got all those projections by ridiculous margins. For example, Fortnite was projecting to do $1 billion in sales on their mobile phone by 2021. It hit that in April. So it's just the numbers have just gone haywire, and it's the download rates. Counter-Strike, which is of course a 21-year-old game, but Counter-Strike Go has been out for about 7 years in its current form. Since lockdown, it has hit 1.5 million live concurrent players, which the record before that was 600,000. So you've added 1 million new gamers to a 21-year-old game.
I think Counter-Strike is also that it's this very weird. Yeah, it's like you go back for that familiar whatever it is. You can't name it. You have to play it to get it. Is how I like to.
So that's actually why Valorant is so good, because that's here to disrupt Counter-Strike.
Okay. I got to. You guys have given me a game.
Download it right now. The game launched today.
Okay, perfect. Great time for that. So towards the end of every episode, right, I do this one random segment which I call Humans of Advertising, where I ask all random questions. I'm going to tweak those questions a little bit for you guys. I thought it would be a little more fun. What is the... I know there have been generally movie remakes of games, or rather games made into movies. I don't think I've seen a good one. What is the worst one you have seen? Or have you seen a good one?
I think a good one that I personally enjoyed was Ready Player One.
Yeah, Ready Player One probably nailed it.
Was really good. And another one that we really enjoyed was the Witcher series.
But was Ready Player One a game? Or was it about... It was about gaming, but was it...
Yeah, it was about virtual reality and inspired from some of the games, but it wasn't based off a game.
Yeah. Like Max Payne, the movie, I hated.
Yeah, those are terrible.
I don't
think it had anything to do.
All of those.
Mortal Kombat.
I think, the others I'm not even getting. I think there were a few more which they made games.
There was World of Warcraft that did really well. I personally enjoyed it because I'm into the lore, but it didn't do very well in the box office because, again, if you hadn't played the game, you would have no idea about what's happening in the movie.
You know the interesting part about that movie, right? It didn't do well in America. It did really well in China.
Yeah, but China also has most of the World of Warcraft players. So.
Yeah, a major amount of money. If I was a person kind of getting into gaming right now, so like one of those people saying, okay, the senior citizen category, which is me, what are the games I should start with?
I think right now definitely make sure PUBG is on that list.
Wait, is this PC or mobile or console? So.
Yeah, I mean you can give me any option right now.
See, definitely Valorant on PC. PUBG on mobile, maybe Free Fire. Fortnite on PC, absolutely. Yeah.
It's on mobile, whatever.
Yeah, not on mobile. Fortnite on mobile, not really.
Isn't as much fun, definitely, but yeah, you can even play it on the PlayStation. That's fine.
Tell me this now. This will make me sound really illiterate. Fortnite and PUBG are pretty much the same game, but in a very different way.
Yes, very, very different way in terms of game mechanics. So conceptually, yes, they're both the same game. Island, last person surviving wins. So that's the basic concept.
The format of games will always be similar because they're battle royale, right? So But the gameplay is absolutely different. PUBG is a little more.
But they kind of they spurted out also around this. They also became popular around the same time, which is which I remember, because I had very weirdly first downloaded Fortnite, and there weren't enough. I couldn't find enough players who were playing it in India. Then I downloaded PUBG, and it was suddenly like this explosion of people who were in my vicinity who were playing it, which is when I was like, when it kind of like felt similar getting in. But yeah, like you said, there are many of
So
these.
if you talk about on a global scale, Fortnite is way bigger than PUBG. In India, especially, it picked up very well because it's a lot easier than Fortnite and it's more optimized for the phone.
Yeah.
While Fortnite is a PC first game, then adopted on console and then released on mobile as well. So, mobile was an afterthought when it comes to Fortnite. It's not the best experience yet. I believe they are working to fix that. But PUBG was just, again, works on the same concept as Counter-Strike. It's basic. You pick up a gun, you see an enemy, you shoot the enemy. While Fortnite was wildly different, where you have to collect resources, you have to build your own towers, protect yourself. There are disco bombs and there's balloons that make you fly around. There's just so many aspects to it. We keep joking around like Fortnite is if Disney made PUBG. It's so colorful and it's so vibrant and cartoony, and you have like so many pop culture references. While PUBG is bare bones. Here's an island. Here's your gun. Survive.
Yeah. Would you say, everybody has their own guilty pleasure game, which they will not like to tell everybody that they actually enjoy playing it. What are those? What is that game for you guys?
Satya, you can go first.
For me, so I only play PUBG right now. So within PUBG, there's a TDM. So TDM is basically Team Deathmatch mode, which is basically 4 minutes of mental action. So you respawn multiple times. The objective is to get 40 kills. That's it. That's my guilty pleasure because it kills all the time and 4 minutes of hardcore action.
I think for me it would be Call of Duty Mobile and Overwatch. Those are two games. Overwatch I've quit so many times. It's like an addiction for me. I somehow end up going back to that game. I play a few games, again I get frustrated and won't touch it for a week. But that's the one game I end up going to is Overwatch.
If Rishi is ever not available on call, he's probably playing Overwatch.
Which isn't very often. I wish it was more often, but I'm trying to actively make an effort. So, Mohit and I, we keep joking around. We're like, we need a break from this lockdown so we can actually game. Like everyone else is enjoying right now and playing, and we are going crazy working day and night. I need a break after this. I just want to chill out, tune off and play.
And why will gaming not die? I normally ask why will advertising not die, but for you guys, I'm going to ask this question.
Oh, that's a very deep question to end with. So, see, it's both an activity and like an engagement. It's both an activity and a passive consumption of content, so to say, right? So I think that's the reason why it occupies a little more mental space for a viewer or a player. So gaming in general is never going to die, and you will always have the Candy Crush still asking people to come and play, and then you will have a PUBG and a Fortnite. So people will find a new way to keep you engaged and consume the content at the same time. Angry Birds, for that matter, just build out a company and turn around the companies in such a big way, right? So,
yeah, for me personally, I think gaming won't die. Again, going back to how I got into gaming, I remember as a kid, I used to fight with my sister all the time for the TV because she wanted to watch her shows and I wanted to watch my cartoons. And I eventually gave up watching the TV because I didn't want to fight with her anymore. And that's how I got into console gaming, and I would just sit and play my game. And then it came to the point after that when I went back to watching TV, it wasn't interesting enough because my actions couldn't change the outcome of what I saw as it could happen in the game. So I think that interactivity, that is what so no one needs to force, I don't need to force you to play a game. If I give you a phone or a PC or a console with games installed, you will pick it up and you'll play it, right? So for kids, I don't need to sell it to them. I don't need to force them, game killer. It's, if you want to play, here's the game, and they'll end up finding something to kill time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. This has been fun.
No, thank you so much.
And hopefully we'll see a lot more growth. And a 900% is a lot, but you can always ask for more.
That's exactly what Satyan said.
We will for sure.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Varun.
I hope you enjoyed that show. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money and Intel. We appreciate their support. It's been a really fun week, guys. We've had some great episodes on your old favorites. Cyrus Says, Advertising is Dead, Edges and Sledges, Football Shitball had a really fun episode as well. Definitely do check it out. I'm sure you're going to enjoy yourselves. And thanks for listening, and we hope to catch you again next week.
Entertainment is like food for the brain. It's a window to culture and a great way to understand the world around us. The internet has changed what it means to be an entertainer, creating new storytellers with millions of fans. It has spawned a new breed, the story sellers, those behind the scenes creating the business for this ecosystem. They work with brands, platforms and channels who are keen to capitalize on an audience hungrier than ever for more stories. I'm Vineet Kanabar, and I have a ringside view to how stories are told and sold. On my show, I bring you creators, artists, executives and marketers for a freewheeling conversation around the business of entertainment. Tune in to Storytellers and Story Sellers for personal stories, analysis and criticism every Thursdays as I talk to the brightest minds telling or selling great stories today.
Namaskar, this is Ashish Vidyarthi. Yes, my friend, these are challenging times, but in these challenging times, we can create something extraordinary. Do take time to listen to my podcast, Begin the Journey, available on the IVM Podcasts, website, app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Remember, we have a great opportunity called life. Cheers.